Best of Times, live from 710 Keel Studios in Shreveport, Louisiana, celebrating age and maturity. Helping you make the best years of your life the best they can be. The Best of Times. Your host, Gary Calligas.
Good morning, Architects listeners. I'm Gary Calligas, the publisher of The Best of Times, the only news magazine for mature adults in Northwest Louisiana. Thank you for tuning in to our show today, and also thanking those who might be listening via the internet at www.710keel.com. Also thanking those who might be listening via the Radio Pup application on their Apple and Android devices. In just a few minutes, we're going to learn some tips how to deal with the thermostat war at your home between your husband and wife, kids and grandkids, etc., who might be living at home today. So stay to this show for some very interesting information for you and your loved ones. Joining me on my radio show as a special guest is Mr. Andrew Armstrong, who is the Vice President of Fujitsu General America and has a 30-year history in the air conditioning and heating industry. And he's on my show to discuss an interesting topic about multi-generational living trend that's happening throughout the world. And he's going to give us some practical tips that help the families prevent the dreaded multi-generational home thermostat war. Right, Andy?
Absolutely. It's becoming more of an issue, and everywhere I go, I'm hearing about it.
Well, I'm going to tell our listeners it happened in our family. I'm not going to pick up my wife, but she has recently in the past probably a year or so, it's the controlling feature of who gets to control those thermostats, and we have some sophisticated ones, probably not as sophisticated as what you offer now to the world, but it is an interesting topic, and everybody's talking about it. I mean, and tell people it's the boomers. It's also the kids coming back home, right? So give our listeners a little overview.
Absolutely. It's a major trend, Gary. And if you look around the country, especially in the last 10 years, there have been a lot of forces causing this to happen. The first is we're all living longer and don't necessarily have the best retirement savings in mind, and it creates some challenges in living space. That coupled with the fact that our kids are facing much higher real estate costs and rental fees, so they're not always ready to take on a separate place on their own. So all of a sudden, those of us in the middle end up with people boomeranging on both sides, and we end up with parents, we end up with kids, and really not quite sure. The good news is we live in pretty big houses, and we can make it work. The bad news is those houses weren't designed with three-generational demands on your thermostat and your heating and cooling needs. So we end up fighting a little bit about what temperature that house should be.
And that's the truth. That is the truth. And that you're seeing a lot of that. And I've even seen. I think your staff told me that it's also what's called the reverse boomerang. Explain to our listeners about that concept. That's interesting.
Yeah, that's basically when your parents are facing choices about where they're going to live. And maybe it's not time for a nursing facility or an extended care facility, but it's just too much to take care of their own place, and it just makes the most economical and living arrangement sense to have your parents come back and live at your space. And a lot of friends my age now are seeing that happen, and it's a good solution. But when we consider just the physiological needs of people change dramatically as they age.
Yeah, and I've seen that, Andy, in various areas throughout the country, and where the parents or grandparents are going back, and instead of going back and forth like every day, twice a day sometimes to take care of the grandkids or other, they either build one or designate an apartment for them and for either the single grandparent or the double grandparent, so they can be really close by to take care of them, not the added expense. As one of those individuals told me, I don't spend hardly any time in my own home. I don't know why I have my own home, and that's what she eventually moved in with her son. So that is quite interesting. But yes,
well, there's a lot of people feeling that way because there's over 28 million homes now in the U.S. that have 3 generations at one time living in that house. So that's a big number and a lot of people with a lot of different comfort needs.
And your people, your staff people, I'm sure your big company there is probably analyzing that. It's increasing, right? It's not decreasing.
Absolutely, and another trend is the country is becoming more urban, and as that happens, real estate is more and more precious and more expensive. So as those families are facing more urban environments, it's more important to get the best bang for your buck from real estate. So we expect that trend to continue for the foreseeable future.
And, you know, the mom and dad, grandmother versus granddaughter, I've seen it, been there, done that. And so, you know, I thought that was interesting. You know, everybody has some different comfort level, and it changes over years, doesn't it?
Absolutely, and just men and women. I know that my wife and I have always had slightly different comfort needs, and I long ago gave up control of the thermostat, just find a sweater. But it gets even more pronounced when we get different generations. So that new baby has some specific needs for comfort, and likewise, an aging parent coming into the home is feeling a draft that you never knew was there. So it takes a little sensitivity to understand that everybody's going to respond to indoor comfort conditions differently. And it's pretty important to recognize that it's real and come up with solutions so everybody can be comfortable and not yelling at each other over a thermostat.
And that's, you know, that's a petty kind of situation where, you know, there's ways to solve that. We're going to talk about that during our show today. But I thought another statement that you made in this prologue information is women's bodies produce less heat than men's, with women preferring a warmer environment than men.
Yes. Absolutely.
But that's not okay, Andy. That's not casting concrete, because I know some women, including my significant other, is just the opposite. She likes it colder, and I don't care when it is, and that, you know, that's her deal. And she'd rather be freezing cold in the room and have blankets and etc. and than to have a really cozy, warm area. So I think it's variable.
I strongly recommend you not go home and tell her she's wrong.
No, of course I don't tell her wrong. I just add more blankets. I mean, hey,
just adjust. Exactly.
We have to pacify our ladies, and I've been married for maybe 45 years this year. So you know, we've complied, but I think it's changed over time about her, you know, wanting more cool, and I see others that do. But the drastic thing I see is when my kids come home. We have 3. And that's what we were talking about. A bunch of us were at a dinner party. We were talking about this, and I said, guess what? I'm going to have a person on the show that's going to talk about this. He says, really? It's that prevalent throughout the United States? Yes, it is. And they were all saying it was with their kids coming back home with their grandkids, and you know, they didn't want it. They all wanted it warmer, and all the parents wanted it colder. So it was like a big fight, and that was even during the summertime. So I mean, how about that one?
It's absolutely the case, and so often, you know, you talk about situations where people are coming from other climates that even makes a difference. So if you become used to living in the Southwest where it's always warm, and then you come back to the Northeast, and people are living at 65 degrees and used to it, well, that just feels like a frigid temperature. So adjusting to those different temperatures from different climates is very important too. But everybody has that unique comfort level, and it's very personal and very different. So having a little empathy makes a big difference.
So do you recommend, if there's a major issue there, that they need to call in local area consultants that can help them solve this problem?
Certainly, that's one of the steps you can take. I think the first step is just talking about it and accepting that, hey, I'm comfortable at this temperature, but maybe other people in the household aren't. And what are our best solutions to deal with that? Sometimes it's just a timing issue. If grandma's home all day and nobody else is there, maybe that programmable thermostat can help solve that problem, so she's not sitting in a temperature that's too cold all day long or too warm. So really just getting to the heart of what the problem, I would say, is step 1. Having a really good conversation about when are you comfortable, why, what can we do about it, what would you like as a solution? Because sometimes it is just as simple as a sweater or a blanket in a certain room, or setting the thermostat differently to operate so it doesn't set back while grandma's home alone. So a lot of options that might be simpler solutions than you think if you just start a conversation.
But to tell, being a senior boomer here, I can attest that I have 3 wonderful kids. They're very high tech. 2 of the sons and one's a daughter. They're all high tech. So many years ago, when we lived at our house, we have a nice house, but it had I would call it, according to my son, ancient thermostats.
Yes.
And so my son is the middle one, is the techie person. So he went out and bought us, we have 2 big units, and bought us these 2 sophisticated thermostats. And I said, I didn't need it. It was working perfect. He said, no, Dad. This is going to save you money, save energy, and et cetera. And it's been remarkable. It's been probably 5 or 6 years. It's not the latest, greatest. Now he tells me I need to get rid of those and get the new one that are internet, connected to my iPhone that he got me, and all that kind of fancy stuff. So, but I want to tell listeners that can save you money as well as convenience, and not having to, the old dial ones, and some people still have them. They're so variable, and most of them don't even accurately do the job now these days, right?
Absolutely. The technology has changed so dramatically over the last 10 years. But yeah, we all remember the Honeywell thermostat on the wall. And
yes.
Turn the dial to fit it where you want. If you're hot, you turn it down, and if you're cold, you turn it up. Real simple.
And if I'm an old guy, I can remember pulling the case off of that, and I was saying, is that a piece of mercury in a little tube? That's what kicks this little dude on? It's like it looked like a mercury switch in a way. It had mercury or something. Is that what it was?
Absolutely. It was a mercury switch on a bimetal coil, and as the temperature changed, that coil would shift. So your comment about accurate temperature was right on target, because those were notoriously misaligned. And you'd get them a little bit off, and all of a sudden it would be 72 degrees in the house, but your thermostat's reading 67, and obviously that in itself can create some problems.
Yeah.
So those mercury switches have been replaced now. Obviously, mercury's a danger from a carcinogen standpoint, and they've been collecting those for years in our industry and upgrading them with a lot better technology, with thermistors and better tools to make it a lot more accurate and a lot more comfortable. And your comment about energy efficiency is right on, Gary. The setback thermostats that allow you to only be heating and cooling that house to the comfort level you want when you're there is pretty important. Turn it down while you're sleeping at night. That can save you a lot of money, and it's a very good upgrade to your heating and air conditioning system that can pay for itself very, very quickly.
And, in this day and age of technology, I'm sure in your industry, everything becomes more efficient, less economical, which I'm sure 10 years ago, those super-duper electric thermostat I bought for, I don't know what, my son ended up buying them for me as a gift, probably cost 1/3 what they cost back then. The technology has increased and the costs have gone down through, y'all's innovative building blocks. Is that true?
That's absolutely true. And the last 10 years, I would say, has been less about saving you on your energy bill, because the ability to set back a thermostat certainly has not changed. So keeping your house at 65 during the night while you're sleeping and heating it back up during the day, it's doing basically the same thing. What's been improved greatly is utility. And for the price point, you can now get thermostats that talk to your cell phone like you were talking about. So if you're on a trip hundreds of miles away, you can still pull up the information about your thermostat and say, hey, I forgot to turn this back. I can do that from the beach in Florida, as opposed to having to be right there touching the button. So we've even taken it one step further, Gary, and now the heating and air conditioning controls from Fujitsu, and many other companies for that matter, will allow you to talk to your Alexa or your Google Home or your Apple device and tell them what you want your temperature to be. So if Grandma's sitting in her chair and doesn't want to get up and touch the thermostat, she can just say, hey, Alexa, make it 72 degrees.
Well, I got to get me one of those. I have Alexa at home, so I need which I call Echo, because I have my daughter is named Alexa. So when we talk about her when she's home, it drives her crazy. So we had to change it about a year ago after driving us crazy. So now you can set that up for. Wow, that is sophisticated. Whoa.
Yeah, and part of the whole thermostat war is about people having autonomy, or the ability to control the comfort on their own. Because as much as we love those programmable thermostats, the engineer in me loves the technology, but there's a lot of people in the household who may be intimidated by that, not comfortable with it. So using a smart control and telling Echo or Alexa to turn it up 2 degrees is a whole lot simpler, and everybody can do that. So people can get some confidence that they know how to control the comfort system and make themselves more comfortable.
One other comment I want to make for you and for my listeners. I had representatives from AEP, that's the power company. Ours local is AEP, but out of Ohio, I believe. But their local area is called SWEPCO, Southwestern Electric Power Company, and some of their representatives came on the show. So I've never had anybody from a utility company on my show for 18 years. So I said, So we learned a lot. But one thing they brought up, which I thought was fascinating, is there is some rebates from the electric companies and other people if you get one of these smart thermostats now. Are you aware of that?
Yeah, absolutely. And that varies across the country, of course. Certainly check with your local utility, or many of the manufacturers like us here at Fujitsu actually have tools on their website that you can put in your zip code and it'll tell you what rebates might be available. But it's in their interest because the utilities are really trying to control demand. They're really trying to keep that use of power down so they don't have to build more power plants. And the ability to use a setback thermostat is very good for the utilities because you use a lot less power in the summertime.
Sure.
And in the middle of the day when they're drawing the most power. So it's really a good thing for the utilities to get all those houses not cooling when the rest of the city is, so they don't have to build that next power plant.
A lot of waste there. Hold that thought. We'll be right back with more information, but now a word from our sponsors and advertisers who make this radio show possible. You're listening to the Best of Times Radio Hour here on News Radio 710 Keel, proudly presented by A-Bears, Town & Country of Shreveport, your Dodge, Chrysler, Ram, and Jeep dealer.
Gary's got more of the Best of Times coming for you on 710 Keel. Now, back to the Best of Times with your host, Gary Calligas.
Welcome back to our show, the Best of Times Radio Hour, proudly presented by A-Bears, Town & Country of Shreveport, your Dodge, Chrysler, Ram, and Jeep dealer. I'm Gary Calligas. I do thank you for listening to our show today. Joining me on my show as a special guest is Mr. Andrew Armstrong, who is the Vice President of Marketing of Fujitsu General America, and he's had a 30-year history in the air conditioning industry and background, and he's giving us some great information about this multi-generational living trend that has some of our family members fighting about the thermostat war in our homes. Thank you, Andy, for joining us today.
My pleasure. Great to be here.
So before we got off, I want to give some recommendations to my listeners out there. Is to contact local power companies if you're considering upgrading, which if you haven't upgraded your thermostat, they should, right, Andy? They should look
Absolutely.
at it, especially if it's 10 years old. Maybe more than maybe 5 years old. I'm thinking about upgrading mine because I want Alexa to be able to talk with it, and I think that'll be cool. Once you told me that, I read this. I called my son. He said, "Dad, that's the latest one. Yours is like 5 years old. It won't do that." I said, "Well, he won't even connect to the internet." I said, Jason said, "Dad, it doesn't have a Wi-Fi built in or connect whatever." Okay, so we can probably have two of them. So that technology can definitely help, and we would love to be able to, when we go on vacation, we just set it at a different temperature, and we hope that's the right temperature. We would love to be able to probably put it down lower or higher. Right?
Absolutely.
So it won't kill the plants or the animals, but that is really impressive that you can control and monitor, so I can tell my Ring system to go talk to Alexa to go change my air conditioning heating system as well.
Exactly.
Is that high tech or what? Right?
It's come a long way.
So, and the other thing you mentioned that installing these smart thermostats can, of course, reduce the utility expense, right?
Yeah, no question about it. Anytime you're changing that temperature set point in the home to a less energy consumptive position, you're going to save money. So if you are able to, while you're at work all day, keep the house at 80 degrees instead of 72, that's just a whole lot of energy you're not using, and that energy very quickly will pay for the investment in the thermostat. And really a couple of options on that, too. You can walk to the nearest Home Depot and find a good smart thermostat that can do all the things we're talking about, but also calling your local heating and air conditioning contractor if you're not wanting to mess with electrical and hassle with all the different colored wires in there. There's a contractor just waiting for your call who would love to install that.
Well, that's true. That is a good point. And some of us, want a challenge to do it, but we have to either call our son or son-in-laws to help us do that as well. But that's probably just as easy to let them evaluate your air conditioning and heating system as well. Speaking of that, though, the technology in heating and cooling products over the many years have really changed, right?
Absolutely. In multiple fronts. We, in this country, have gone through quite a few cycles over the last several years of different efficiency level and different technologies. And so that's another good reason to talk to your local contractor and just find out where you stand in that process. Because if your equipment is 10 or 15 years old, chances are good it's nearing the end of its normal life, especially on the air conditioning and heat pump side. So it might be worth getting a second opinion and looking at that and seeing what new options are available. But as we move forward, we're seeing a lot more ductless technology.
Explain that to us.
Absolutely. It's something that actually came to this country 25, 30 years ago, but it's been the prevalent way of heating and cooling most of the rest of the world. And the ductless technology, in our homes, we usually have a furnace or an air handler somewhere in the attic or in the basement or in a crawl space, and that feeds ductwork that serves the entire household,
right.
Which has been a good way, because we live in pretty big houses in this country, and it's a good way to heat and cool them. The challenge is that ductwork is not the most efficient way to deliver heating and air conditioning to your home. So we lose a lot of energy in that ductwork. If it's in a 130-degree attic, you can imagine how much that air conditioning is being heated up as it travels through those ducts. Not to mention the fact that we have to have a motor that forces that air all the way through the house.
Sure.
Through that ductwork. So not always the best way to do it. So the new technology, the ductless technology, basically takes that ductwork out of your house and allows you to take just refrigerant, which goes in about a 3/8-inch tube around your home, and delivers the same heating and cooling to the space where it's needed. And that can be delivered either on a unit that hangs on the wall. Maybe you've seen a ductless air handler that hangs on the wall, or sometimes they're mounted on the floor. Sometimes you see them cassettes in the ceiling in businesses, and sometimes they even just have a little bit of ductwork that runs very close to that room. So that allows you to move BTUs, or heating and cooling units, around the home exactly where you need them, as opposed to trying to force the whole house to be the same temperature.
So is there a central control unit that pumps all this refrigerant through all these locations?
Yeah, there's a couple different ways to do it. Quite often, as we first started seeing this technology in this country, it would be for solving a problem or for addition. So if you put a sunroom on your house, sometimes you'll see a ductless unit there just because the original unit in the house wasn't big enough to handle that extra space. Sometimes you have homeowners who have a master bedroom or a guest bedroom that just never heated and cooled quite properly, so they'll put a ductless unit in there. Now what we're seeing is a much more advanced unit that allows up to 9 different indoor heads off of one outdoor unit. So you have one outdoor feeding 9 different indoor, and that allows you to have a different temperature setting, a different comfort level at every room in the house. So if grandma's in one bedroom and the kids are in another and you and your wife are in another one, all of a sudden you can have 3 different temperatures, one at 83, one at 78, and one at 72, and everybody can be exactly where they want to be, and that system's going to run just fine and give everybody just what they want.
Okay, now to let our listeners visualize this. So it's thin copper tubing that loops around and must continuously flows through, correct?
Yeah, there's a couple of ways it happens with these systems. One is there's copper tubes running from indoor to outdoor to each system. The more advanced systems, what we call variable refrigerant flow, actually just has one set of tubes and it just branches off for each unit. So it's smart enough to know exactly what it needs for each unit, and it feeds just the right amount of heated and cooled refrigerant to each space so it can get just the temperature it needs. So much more efficient way to deliver that heating and cooling through the home.
And it's probably initial cost involved, but the savings eventually will be each and every year, probably in that particular area. Right?
Absolutely. The efficiencies are high to begin with. So in heating and air conditioning, the government has a rating called Seasonal Energy Efficiency Ratio for cooling, and for the heat pump side, it's called the Heating Performance Standard. So, and those are good with these technologies to begin with. But when you're only heating each room to the temperature it needs to be, and able to keep the other spaces less cool, same as we were talking about with the programmable thermostat. When you're not heating it all the way to that same temperature all day long for the entire day, you can save a lot of money. Same way with the house. If quite often we live in very large houses, as we've talked about. So if you have a 2,500 square foot home, but you and your spouse only live in 700 square feet of it, this technology allows you just to keep that 700 square feet comfortable as opposed to that whole 2,500.
Oh, and that is remarkable. So for some of the people that have those type of homes, yes. Right now it's difficult unless you have 2 or 3 different small systems, which I've been seeing lately. Some of the homes that are built for patio homes or whatever, they'll have 2 small compressor units, it seems like. Mm-hmm. And one does the part of the area and the other one does the part of the area. We have it at our home. We have 2 separate, one for upstairs and one for downstairs, which has been perfect. So I can generally keep the downstairs the way I like it. The wife's upstairs with all the bedrooms keeps it the way she wants it. So that's how we solve our war. We have a split level. We have a split level area. So and you might want to tell that you mentioned it. Hey, if it's not to your liking, you either going to have less blankets or more blankets, right?
Exactly. Come downstairs and say hi and bring your blanket.
So retrofitting, I know some of my listeners out there are saying, Gary, my home's like 25, 30 years old. If I want to do this new technology, this whatever it's called, the ductless mini split systems, is it going to require me to just gut out everything? Do the ducts just stay there? I'm sure they do. I mean, they're going to pull them out.
In some cases, they can. The good news is, in many cases, it can find you some extra space, too, because quite often we've snuck ducts into closets and found secret spaces to take advantage of, and it's lost some living space. So sometimes adding this back will give you back a closet or some other space. But the good news is the good mechanical contractors know this technology, and they have great ideas for how to make this happen and do so in a way that's not too intrusive.
And it's probably quieter. Wouldn't it be quieter in a way?
It's very quiet technology. When you don't have all that air flowing through the house, it does make a big difference. So imagine that 25, 30-year-old house you were talking about with one system up in the attic. Think about all that air that has to flow to heat and cool that house. So you're going to hear that motor running. You're going to hear the air flowing through the house. And sometimes you get used to it and forget how loud it really is. But when you put in a much more quiet ductless system in, all of a sudden, you go, wait a second, that's a lot quieter than it used to be. It can't be running. But it is, and it does a really good job keeping it comfortable and does so in a very quiet fashion.
Okay, so one other follow-up. I'm just thinking about this ductless system because the ducts, which some of us, I would say many people have the duct systems in their homes, apartments, whatnot. They tend to collect different allergens and mold and et cetera. And if you don't clean them occasionally, it can be dangerous, right? And to people's health reasons.
Yeah, certainly. We live in a very polluted indoor environment as a rule. We don't do a great job of filtering it, and our ducts do collect a lot of different things over time. So it can be a problem, and this is one way to eliminate that and hide that dark space that's away from sight. And
well, the air duct cleaners probably won't like us making that statement, but that's their job, is coming out there periodically and running. I don't know. They run I would call it the super duper vacuum cleaner with the scraper. I'd had it done on my house a couple of times, and it found a lot. And then they treat it, whatever it's treated with, and hopefully we haven't had any issues. But some people have a lot of allergies. I was suggesting to a family whose kids are always getting different allergies and stuff. I said, you might want to check, the 40-year-old home that you bought recently. They probably didn't ever change the duct systems out.
Yeah, those guys do a fantastic job, and I would never disparage them. They do good work, and especially in those cases with young kids with allergies, you hate to see them suffer, and that's one of the great places to check, Gary, is to make sure they're getting good air out of their duct system, and if that's the source of the allergens, boy, you want to eliminate that. And those guys do a super job. Well,
going back, I'm just thinking ahead of here about these split systems. This is fascinating me. I didn't read it in great detail, but I'm going to learn more about it. Hopefully my listeners will as well. It has a separate... I'm trying to fathom this. So if this is run in 12 different units, I can control whether I want it in the bedroom or the guest bedroom or the dining room or the living room. You can have multiple thermostats to control all that. Is that right?
That is correct. Yeah, you'd have a different thermostat on the wall, or remote control, or even iPhone technology or mobile phone technology that you can control and have a different comfort level in each of those spaces.
So you can, in fact, if it was connected to the Alexa app, little lady, you can just tell her to set different living room this, set this, that, set that. Wow, that is really space age here. We're moving into the Jetson world here, right?
It's not going to take you out of bed and put your slippers on like it did for George. You can't tell your air conditioner where you want the temperature.
They're working on that too. I'm sure they're working on robots, and they're going to take my shoes off and give me a nice massage before I go to bed, right? I'm sure your engineers,
I hope so.
Your engineers, wherever they may be in America, or where's your company based out of? I can't remember.
We're based out of, we opened in Japan many years ago.
Yeah. So. Well, let's hold that thought. We'll be right back with more information. But now, a word from our sponsors and advertisers who make this radio show possible. You're listening to the Best of Times Radio Hour here on News Radio 710 Keel, proudly presented by Heberts, Town & Country of Shreveport, your Dodge, Chrysler, Ram, and Jeep dealer.
Gary's got more of the Best of Times coming for you on 710 Keel. Now, back to the Best of Times with your host, Gary Calligas.
Welcome back to our show, the Best of Times Radio Hour, proudly presented by Heberts, Town & Country of Shreveport, your Dodge, Chrysler, Ram, and Jeep dealer. I'm Gary Calligas, and I do thank you for listening to our show today. Joining me on my show as a special guest is Mr. Andrew Armstrong, who's Vice President of Marketing at Fujitsu, can't say the word, General America, and has a 30-year air conditioning and heating industry background. And he's been on our show today to give us some important tips about dealing with the family issues regarding the thermostat war, making it either too hot or too cold for our family members and guests who might be coming in. So thank you, Andy, for joining us today here on the Best of Times Radio Hour.
My pleasure. It's been fun chatting about the thermostat wars. There's a lot of different solutions, and we certainly have covered several of them.
And I'm sure some of my listeners are going to say, I'm going to pull the thermostat off of my wall and throw it out to my wife and kids who get mad at me. Yeah. We hope it doesn't get to that violence, but we hope they just solve it by peace and a peace treaty that they can have it in certain temperatures on certain hours a day in certain rooms, right?
Absolutely, and just a quick summary, hey, get smart. Use the new technology. That's certainly one good way to face it. Looking for better energy efficiency through that better control stat always helps. boy, giving everybody in the home the ability to control the thermostat certainly is a big help. We talked about room-by-room comfort and some of the advantages there and how you can really customize by zone what you want to have happen in the home. And then finally, the one we didn't mention, I think is probably important, is don't let the different temperature demands of everybody get in the way of that all-important family time. We want to see that happen, too.
Oh, that's definitely important. I mean, that family time together, and we don't want to feud over a minor issue of if it's a few degrees here, a few degrees there. I mean, it's fun. It's fun having these challenges, which I would not believe that all this type of topic would be around the past 6 months in my area and my family. We never even thought about it before until now. I don't know. It's been weird. And then how happenstance that you and your staff let me know about this thermostat war. I says perfect. This is a perfect.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're promoting this throughout the world. That is happening not just in Shreveport and Bossier City, Louisiana, but all over the United States and probably in other countries. Other countries.
Absolutely. And Gary, you reminded me earlier, I would be remiss if I didn't bring this up because I think it could be important to some of your listeners. We talked about the fact that you have two systems in your home, one for upstairs, one for downstairs. And that has certainly become much more common. And in two-story houses, it's too often that warm air stratifies up to the second floor, and it's hard to keep at the same temperature as the second. So going to 2 stories was a very common solution. And I wanted to bring your listeners up to speed on folks who do have one system and have that problem, that there's not always is it required to change the entire system. And there are great contractors out there and great products out there that allow you to add a damper system that can make the home a lot more comfortable. And a good contractor can come in and really tell you exactly how that will work and not have to change out all the rest of your equipment, but can do a retrofit on just some ducting and make that home a lot more comfortable. So I wanted to throw that out as one of the many options to help control the things going on in the home with the thermostat wars.
Some of the electric companies, the electric company that came here, said that they would come and do an efficiency expert, would come and evaluate your heating loss, your air conditioning loss, your et cetera throughout the houses, that your home that could save you money, but also it wouldn't tax your air conditioning and heating system. Isn't that a good thing to do?
That is great advice. And so often the most simple things we can do are the ones that are right under our noses and we just don't think about. And the type of test they're talking about doing really evaluates the home as an envelope. And in our industry, we talk about that envelope that's heating and cooling on the inside from those outdoor temperatures that are making it less comfortable. And essentially what they do on those types of tests is to determine where the heat and the cool are going.
Right.
And sometimes that's through airflow gaps, sometimes that's through poor insulation, sometimes it's through bad windows, sometimes it's through things in your home that are actually creating heat in the summer that don't need to be. And those type of evaluations can save you a lot of money, and quite often with very little investment. So adding a little insulation to the attic, finding out that you just need a little caulk around the doors, look for some weather stripping. Those little tricks can just put lots of money in your pocket over the years, and once you make that improvement, it's going to be that way for a long time. So one of those investments that pays and pays and pays.
All right, and I want you to emphasize the fact about just an added little bit of insulation will definitely help. I mean, I've done that in the house we've lived in actually twice because it was packed, and I decided to do it another after I think it was about 10 years. We got a little bit. I put some more up there. It was so inexpensive, and I could notice the electricity bill going down the following month. So that little bit.
And sometimes it even makes it a little quieter in your home.
Oh, it does make it. Oh, well, I'm glad you mentioned that. Yes, it made our home much quieter because of being in the attic in a 2-story home, and it was really remarkably different. And so that's another distinct advantage. So what should a homeowner out there do to evaluate if they want to upgrade to all the new latest heating and air conditioning systems?
Well, the first piece of advice I would give your listeners, Gary, is to talk to the whole family and find out what they like and what they don't like about the current system. Because we all have different comfort needs. We all have different interactions with that comfort system. So really ask the questions and find out, hey, what have you always liked about the comfort of our home? What have you not liked about it? And give everybody a voice to tell you what's working and what's not working. Look around at things like your registers. Look around at where you change your filter. Look around at the way that the pipes are run through your house and the ductwork's run through your house. Make sure you understand all that. And whatever questions you have, write them down, because the best thing you can do for a contractor is know what you want when he comes in. Second thing I'd recommend is take some time to do some research. There's tons and tons of information available online, and find out what's going on in that technology. And there's a lot of good advice. There's a lot of good equipment, and doing a little bit of research beforehand is going to make you a little bit more in line with what that contractor can do for you. Then finally is write down your own questions. Take that time to think about what do I want, what do I not want, and what is going to make this house a lot more comfortable. And as you do that, the contractor is going to be able to design a system that works very, very well for you.
Wow. Well, that's some great advice. Thank you again, Andy, for joining us today here on the Best of Times Radio Hour. You gave us some great practical tips, and hopefully we can solve some of those home thermostat wars throughout our area, and hopefully you can help solve them as well as throughout the United States and throughout the world. So again, thank you for joining us. You were quite informative and giving us some great educational information and tips.
Outstanding. Great to be with you, Gary. And for all your listeners, you can go to ConstantComfort.com and take a closer look at the Fujitsu technology. And we enjoyed being with you and wish you and your listeners the best.
Okay, say that again. It's Constant Comfort?
ConstantComfort.com.
ConstantComfort.com. So again, I'm going to check that out as well. I know many of my listeners out there. Again, thank you for joining us today.
Our pleasure.
We'll be right back with more information, but now a word from our sponsors and advertisers who make this radio show possible. You're listening to the Best of Times Radio Hour here on News Radio 710 Keel, proudly presented by Heberts Town & Country of Shreveport, your Dodge, Chrysler, Ram, and Jeep dealer.
Gary's got more of the Best of Times coming for you on 710 Keel.
Back to our show, the Best of Times Radio Hour, here on News Radio 710 Keel. Thank you for listening to our show today. Don't forget to pick up your personal copy of the Best of Times at one of our 522 distribution locations. May God bless you and your family. God bless America. Have a great day and a great weekend. Thank you again for listening to our show. I'm Gary Calligas, wishing you and yours the best of times both today and every day. Have a great day.
You've been listening to the Best of Times on 710 Keel. Join us again next Saturday at 9 for the Best of Times. This is News Radio 710 Keel, KEEL, Shreveport Bossier.